This lake belongs to the HOA. You have 72 hours to leave. Those were the words that stopped me cold. They came from Maria Rogers, the same woman who, just 6 months earlier, had shaken my hand, smiled at my nephew, and sold me the very property I poured my life into. Now she stood on the shoreline of my own lake, claiming it as community property. I stared at her, heart pounding. "I own this land," I said. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. She smiled, a smile that wasn't friendly anymore. Not for long. Minutes later, a patrol car rolled up. The officer who stepped out wasn't just holding a clipboard. He knew my name, my address, and something else, my exact mortgage amount. Only 3 entities should have known that number. Me, my bank, and Maria Rogers. That was the moment the puzzle pieces started to fit together. This wasn't an accident. It was a plan. But Maria and her people had made one mistake, one tiny detail, and that detail would cost them everything. If you've ever had someone try to take what's yours, you'll understand what came next. 2 years earlier, my vision 2 years ago, I made what I thought was the smartest investment of my life. $50,000. For most people, that's not a casual number. For me, a 41-year-old landscape contractor juggling a second mortgage and a business loan that kept me up at night, it was everything. But when I first saw that 3-acre plot with a dried-up lake bed no one had touched in decades, I didn't see dead land. I saw a legacy. I saw my 8-year-old nephew Tommy, gap-toothed grin, learning to fish on a quiet summer morning. I saw families gathering on warm evenings, neighbors laughing instead of scrolling on their phones. In a world that felt increasingly fake and disconnected, I saw something real. So I signed the papers, shook Maria Rogers' perfectly manicured hand, and got to work. Building the dream, 18 months. That's how long it took. $67,000 for the second mortgage. $28,000 for the business loan. Weekends, nights, early mornings. Every spare hour was poured into excavation, liner installation, filtration systems, landscaping, and stocking that lake with bass and bluegill. Sometimes Tommy helped, dragging buckets of gravel across the yard, firing off a million questions about ecosystems. The day we released the first fish, he looked up at me and said, "Uncle Joe, this is the coolest thing you've ever done." I snapped a photo of him holding that first base. I still carry it in my wallet. That single moment made every dollar and every drop of sweat worth it. The grand opening when the lake finally opened, it felt like a dream. 40 neighbors showed up for the barbecue. Kids ran barefoot in the grass. Parents actually talked to each other instead of staring at screens. Property values in the area jumped by 30% practically overnight. Homes worth $280,000 were suddenly assessed at $364,000. Everyone was winning. Maria was there too, taking photos, shaking hands, telling people how wonderful it all was. "Joseph, this really increases our neighborhood appeal," she said. I believed her enthusiasm was genuine. I noticed her taking measurements on her phone, but figured she was just updating her listings. Real estate agents do real estate agent things, right? The red flags, then the weird stuff began. Small things at first. I'd catch Maria at the property at odd hours. "Just checking the perimeter for HOA purposes," she'd say. Once I walked up to her car just as she was tucking a thick document under her seat. The letterhead had the word development on it. She laughed it off, said it was listing material. I shrugged. Why would I suspect my own real estate agent or HOA president of anything shady? Then she made it official. She came right up to me while Tommy was fishing and asked for my equipment insurance certificate, standard liability assessment, she called it. Sounded routine. So I printed everything out. $8,000 for the filtration system, for $1,500 for the aerator, $2,800 for the pump, $3,200 for the UV sterilizer. Every cost, every vendor, every purchase date. She photographed each page, thanked me professionally, and left. The next morning, my filtration system wasn't just vandalized. It was surgically destroyed. Intake valve unscrewed, control panel wires cleanly cut. $3,000 gone overnight. The breaking point, that was it. I installed 4 security cameras with night vision and motion detection. $800 I didn't really have, but couldn't afford not to spend. That night, reviewing the footage, I saw something that made my stomach drop. 11:47 p.m. A car pulls up. Maria steps out. She isn't alone. She's got professional surveying equipment, laser measurer, tablet, clipboard. For 20 minutes, she maps my property boundaries with the precision of someone planning construction. Then, clear as day, on the audio, "I have all the numbers you need," she says. "Equipment costs, financing details, everything. Send your people tomorrow morning." I sat at my kitchen table replaying it over and over. Send your people. What people? Maybe I told myself this was just an HOA project. Maybe it was nothing. But that voice in my head, the same one that's kept me alive in business for 15 years, was screaming that something was very wrong. The confrontation, 8:47 a.m. the next morning. Car door slams. That's exactly when I pour my first cup of coffee, a detail I've never mentioned to anyone. Through the window, I see a man in what looks like county attire, badge glinting, clipboard under his arm. He walks up to my porch like it's routine. "Mr. Harris?" he says when I open the door. Doesn't wait for me to confirm. Glances down at his clipboard and starts speaking, and the words freeze me in place before he even finishes. $67,000. Not about $65,000. Not somewhere around that. $67,000. The exact amount of my second mortgage signed just 3 weeks ago. "How do you know that number?" I managed to ask. He smiles. Not warm, not cold. Just professional. "Mr. Harris, we conduct thorough investigations before issuing citations. The county has access to property records, loan documentation, and permit databases." He hands me a citation printed on official-looking paper. "You've constructed an unauthorized water recreational facility, $50,000 investment. Second mortgage of $67,000 through Midwest Home Loans. Business loan of $28,000 from First National Bank." Every detail of my private finances, right there in his hands. "That's a substantial risk for someone your age," Officer Bradley told me, "especially for an unpermitted commercial operation." His citation listed violations I barely understood. Unauthorized water recreational facility. $5,000 commercial operation without proper permitting. $7,000 environmental modification without EPA clearance. $3,000 total fines. $15,000. Court date in 30 days. It even had a QR code for convenient online payment. Bradley, County Compliance Division, his badge said, handed me his card and walked back to his car like he'd just delivered a pizza, not turned my world upside down. I stood there holding the paper, watching him drive away, and a chill crept up my spine. Something was off. I couldn't explain it, but the whole interaction felt wrong. The paperwork that didn't add up after he left, I sat at my kitchen table, citations spread in front of me, and did what I always do when something doesn't feel right. I compared. I pulled out an old building permit from a deck I'd built 2 years ago, legitimate county paperwork, and laid it beside Bradley's citation. At first glance, they matched. Fonts similar, layout close. But when I held both pages up to the light, the difference hit me. The watermark. On the county permit, the watermark was perfectly centered. On Bradley's citation, the word authority was shifted by maybe a millimeter. The font weight was slightly off too. And the paper texture, it felt like generic security paper you could buy in an office supply store, not the contractor grade stock the county uses. I told myself maybe they'd changed printers. Maybe different departments used different templates. But that nagging voice wouldn't stop. The neighbor who knew, then a knock at the door. Diane Fletcher. She lived across the street, 60 years old, sharp-eyed, one of those neighbors who notices everything. We'd only exchanged greetings before, but now her tone was urgent. "Joseph, I used to spend 20 years investigating insurance fraud," she said. "I saw that man at your door this morning. That citation he gave you. Can I take a look?" Desperate for clarity, I handed it over. Diane scanned the paper with practiced eyes. Within 30 seconds, her expression hardened. "Joseph, this layout. I've seen forgeries with these same flaws." She pointed out details I'd noticed and others I hadn't. The reference number used a format the county doesn't use, CD258847WR, instead of the fiscal year system. The paper quality was commercial grade. The watermark alignment was off. "I'm not certain," she said carefully, "but this has the hallmarks of a sophisticated forgery." The fake officer then she opened her laptop right there on my porch, scanned the citation's QR code, and it redirected to a professional-looking website. County logo, legal language, everything. But Diane dug deeper. She ran a WHOIS lookup right in front of me. The domain was registered only 8 months ago. The county's real site would be decades old, registered anonymously, paid through a government account, hosted by a secure server. Then Diane did something I didn't even know was possible. She called the registrar directly, using what she said were old investigator contacts. 5 minutes later, she had a name. The domain was paid for by a business credit card belonging to Apex Security Solutions, LLC. Another search. Owner, Bradley Turner. Not Officer Bradley, just Bradley Turner. Business category, private investigation and consulting services. No law enforcement license. No government contracts. Zero authority to issue citations. Diane turned to me. "Who had access to your financial documents from when you bought this property?" My stomach dropped. "Maria," I said. "Maria Rogers. She handled the whole closing. She'd have copies of everything. Mortgage applications, loan approvals, bank statements." Diane's face went grim. Then she could have given them to this Bradley Turner. The question is why? The web unravels. We sat there in silence, both processing. Then Diane pulled up business filing records. Apex Security Solutions, LLC, Suite 244, Commerce Street. Rogers Premier Properties, Suite 240, same building. 4 doors apart. Maria and this fake cop weren't just connected. They were literal office neighbors. But that wasn't what made my hands grip the edge of the table. It was the third document Diane showed me. A business license application from 3 months prior. It required listing primary service clients. There were 4 names on that list. 3 I didn't recognize. 1 I did. And seeing it made everything suddenly, terrifyingly clear. Diane was pulling up another search when her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her expression changed. Not fear exactly, but something colder. She showed me the text message. Unknown number. No words. Just a photo. Taken from across the street. Through my living room window. A clear view of us sitting at my kitchen table. Laptop open between us. Our research on display. In the corner of the photo, a timestamp from 3 minutes ago. Whoever took it was still out there. Still watching. And they wanted us to know it. The HOA emergency meeting 2 days later. An emergency HOA meeting was called with just 48 hours notice. Technically illegal. The bylaws required 7 days for non-emergency sessions. But Maria knew most people wouldn't check the rules. I showed up at the community center. 19 residents out of 47 households. Less than half. Maria stood at the front, laptop connected to a projector, professional as ever. She wasn't just presenting. She was orchestrating. Her PowerPoint was polished, too polished. Aerial photos of my lake. When had she taken those? Charts showing traffic increases with no data sources, stock photos of overcrowded public pools labeled as safety risks. She built her case like a lawyer, using language designed to sound protective while actually being aggressive. I move that the HOA adopt a resolution, she read from the screen, temporarily suspending any marketing, promotion, or public association of properties within HOA boundaries with the lake facility pending legal clarification of its status and verification of appropriate permitting and insurance documentation. Translation: nobody in the neighborhood could mention my lake in property listings, on social media, or in any community events until Maria decided otherwise. A gag order dressed up as community protection. Mr. Clark, 68, retired teacher, sharp as they come, stood up. Maria, you personally sold me my house 3 years ago. Your listing specifically advertised exclusive lakefront community access with upcoming amenities. I still have the printout. Maria barely blinked. That was aspirational language about future community improvements, Mr. Clark. We all want proper permitting in place. But Clark wasn't backing down. You're lying. Your listing said planned lake restoration by a local contractor. You knew about this before Joseph, even started. Her expression went cold. The professional smile disappeared. Mr. Clark, this meeting is about current community safety, not parsing past marketing copy. We need to protect all homeowners' interests. Vote, please. 12 people voted for the suspension. 3 voted against. Mr. Clark, an elderly woman named Mrs. Patterson, and Diane, who had joined the HOA just to have a voice in this meeting. One person, Kevin Walsh, a property manager with rental units, voted present, clearly avoiding conflict. The motion passed. Just like that, my lake became untouchable. The smoking gun, but Diane wasn't done. After the meeting, she checked the metadata on the announcement email. Created at 6:30 p.m. Scheduled to send at 7:52. The meeting was at 8 o'clock. Maria had written that email before the meeting even started. She'd secured the votes in advance. This wasn't democracy. This was theater. And within 3 hours of that meeting, my phone wouldn't stop ringing that Monday afternoon, and each call carved another piece out of the life I had built. The first one was from Morrison Estate. That project alone, $45,000 worth of landscaping, was something I had been nurturing for months. Designs approved, schedules aligned, crews ready. Then Joseph, their manager, called. His voice was polite, rehearsed, detached. Mr. Harris, we've been made aware of legal disputes involving your business operations. We're uncomfortable proceeding. We've decided to hire someone else. And just like that, click, line dead. Months of work vanished in under a minute. Before I could even process it, the phone buzzed again. This time, Riverside Corporate Campus. $68,000 tied to a grounds redesign that was supposed to be my big breakthrough into commercial contracts. Their legal team had reviewed my HOA situation. Suddenly, I was a liability. The contract? Terminated under some neat little clause buried in the paperwork. Another click. Another loss. Then came the third blow, an email, not even the courtesy of a call. Westfield Mall. $92,000 on the table for a landscape renovation. The message was cold, clinical. Community concerns regarding your operations have come to our attention. We are exercising our right to termination. One afternoon, 3 projects gone. $25,000 of immediate losses. Not because I delivered poor work. Not because of any mistake I had actually made. But because one HOA president slipped the words legal concerns into an email and nobody bothered to check if it was true. But let me tell you, what broke me wasn't the money. It was Tuesday evening. Tommy came over to fish like he always did. He was only 8, all skinny arms, grass-stained sneakers, and that gap-toothed smile. But this time, he wasn't smiling. He sat on the dock, holding his fishing rod without casting, and asked me why his best friend Jake wasn't allowed to come over anymore. Jake's mom had gotten the same HOA email. The one carefully worded, designed to sound official, but vague enough to avoid outright orders. It told residents to refrain from associating with properties under dispute for liability protection. It wasn't a ban. It wasn't even a demand. But it was enough to poison the air. Neighbors stopped visiting. Families who once filled the lakeside with laughter kept their distance. Social media tags vanished. By Saturday, a place that usually brought 8 to 10 families for fishing and picnics was empty. Just silence. Just me and Tommy. And then, that kid, too young to understand lawsuits or fraud, looked at me with tears welling up and asked, "Uncle Joe, did we do something wrong?" I had no answer. What could I say? How do you explain to a child that adults can be this cruel, this petty, all for money and property lines? That night, after Tommy went home, I met Diane at a coffee shop just outside the neighborhood. She had news. She'd gone to police, filed a real report, and the detective assigned was Tom Morgan. 15 years with the county sheriff's department. A man who'd seen his share of scams and frauds. Detective Morgan was calm, almost casual, stirring sugar into his coffee like we were just talking baseball. But his words hit like hammer strikes. He'd already checked everything. Badge number CD 8847 didn't exist in any state or county database. The citation format didn't match a single official document. Bradley Turner? No law enforcement license. Apex Security Solutions? 0 government contracts on record. Mr. Harris, he said, looking me dead in the eye. You're the victim of fraud and impersonation of law enforcement. Both are felonies. But then came the catch. Defense attorneys will say this is just an aggressive business dispute, a misunderstanding. I need more evidence before I can push for arrest warrants. I need Turner and Rogers on record admitting to what they did. Can you document everything? Every interaction? Every threat? I nodded, but inside I felt like the walls were closing in. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced the hallway until nearly 3 in the morning. That's when my phone buzzed. Just one message. No words. No caption. Just a single photo. Tommy, standing by the bike racks at school, smiling with his friends. My blood turned to ice. Someone had been close enough to him in daylight. Close enough to snap that picture. And they wanted me to know it. I called Detective Morgan with shaking hands. He picked up on the first ring, his voice different this time, sharp, cold, focused. They just crossed the line, he said. Now we can really go after them. Tell me, if you got that photo at 2 in the morning of your child or your nephew, what would you do? What would be your first move? 1 week later, Diane showed up at my door with her laptop, looking like she hadn't slept in days. She spread printouts across my kitchen table and said the words that made my stomach twist. Joseph, this isn't just about you. Turner has been running this scam for years. For years. 3 different states. 22 documented victims. Businesses, families, farms. All targeted. All terrorized by fake government officials until they were forced into panicked, life-destroying decisions. She showed me one case in Nebraska. Wilson versus Henderson Development Corporation. Buried in county records. The Wilsons have been hit with the exact same scheme, bogus EPA inspections, phony zoning citations, fake agricultural compliance violations. Almost word for word, identical to mine. Diane even called them. Eleanor Wilson answered the phone, her voice trembling. You're investigating the same people who took our farm? She asked. Her story still haunts me. The Wilsons lost 40 acres of farmland, land they had inherited from Eleanor's parents, worth nearly $500,000. A developer had offered them a lowball $270,000. They refused. Weeks later, inspectors showed up with fabricated violations, soil contamination, drainage issues, zoning problems. Fines stacked up to $105,000 they could never pay. Terrified of jail, Eleanor and Frank, both in their 70s, sold the farm for $270,000. They lost nearly $180,000 of value. Worse, they lost their legacy, the land that was supposed to pass down to their grandchildren. And that was just one family. Out of 22, the Wilsons only discovered the truth by accident. Months after they sold their farm, a friend told them the new owners had 0 violations on record. None. Eleanor, desperate, called the real EPA. No inspections had ever been scheduled for their property. No case existed in any database. The statute of limitations had passed. The sale was legally binding. The farm was gone forever, stolen by men in fake uniforms and forged authority. We lost everything. Eleanor whispered over the phone, her voice cracking on the word everything. My parents built that farm from nothing. We lost our retirement security, our legacy, and there was nothing we could do. I sat there listening to this 72-year-old woman describe the same terror that had taken root in my own life, and something in me shifted. This wasn't just about my lake anymore. This was about making sure Bradley Turner never did this to another family again. And Diane wasn't done digging. She found another case. Arizona. Just 18 months ago. Martinez versus Westgate Properties, LLC. Rachel Martinez was 38, the proud owner of a small coffee shop called Rachel's Roast with a rental property above it. She'd fought off a 40% rent increase from her landlord. She had 3 years left on her lease and refused to be bullied. Then the inspectors arrived. First came the health department uniform. Food safety violations, improper refrigeration temperatures, $8,000. Inadequate ventilation, $10,000. Next week, the fire marshal. Egress violations, $15,000. Insufficient fire suppression, $12,000. Then a building inspector. Structural concerns, $17,000. Electrical code violations, $8,000. Fake citations stacked up to $70,000. Rachel had passed a real health inspection 2 months prior with a perfect score. But when 3 different agencies show up threatening to yank your license and press criminal charges, you panic. You don't have the time, money, or resources to verify each one. Rachel closed her coffee shop, defaulted on her rental mortgage, lost both properties, filed for bankruptcy. Total losses, about $220,000 when you factor in business value and property equity. 3 months later, a new restaurant opened in her exact location. 0 violations. 0 citations. Rachel called the Real Health Department. Her shop had never been cited in their records. By then she was living with her parents, financially destroyed, unable to afford lawyers to go after anyone. Detective Morgan coordinated a video call with all of us, me, Diane, Eleanor and Frank Wilson, and Rachel Martinez. 6 people in 4 states, bound by the same criminal operation. We spread out our evidence like detectives in a movie. Eleanor produced her citations from 2 years ago. Same 1mm watermark error on every document. Rachel showed hers, identical formatting, the same wrong reference numbers, the same QR code redirect pattern. My citation matched perfectly. All of us have been targeted during property disputes. All of us have been terrorized by people who looked and sounded like government officials. This is interstate fraud, Detective Morgan said, scribbling notes even through the video feed. With multiple victims across state lines, I can involve the FBI. We're looking at federal racketeering charges. RICO prosecution. These carry 20-year sentences. Eleanor spoke up, her voice steadier now. We want justice. Frank and I are elderly, but we'll testify. We'll do whatever it takes. Frank, who had been silent until now, added simply, we lost everything. If our story helps stop them, then it means something. Rachel nodded. I've been living with my parents for 18 months, trying to rebuild my credit, my life. I'll do whatever's necessary to make sure he never does this again. After the call ended, my phone rang. Eleanor calling back. Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. Joseph, she said, there's something we didn't mention. Something Frank made me promise not to tell anyone. But after hearing your story, I can't keep quiet anymore. She paused. I could hear her inhale sharply, the kind of breath you take before you cross a line you can't uncross. After we lost the farm, we hired someone to investigate. Not a lawyer, someone who knew how to find things that weren't supposed to be found. He worked on our case for 3 days. Then he showed up at our house at midnight, returned our money in cash, and told us 2 things. Stop digging, and never say my name to anyone. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. He said there were others. Eleanor continued. Not just Bradley, not just fake cops. He said the operation had a name. A long pause. When is it smarter to walk away from the truth than to keep digging? Have you ever been warned to stop asking questions by someone who looked you in the eye and meant it? Week 2 of my nightmare began with Maria launching her next attack. She posted on a platform I won't name, but one every HOA in America uses for neighborhood communication. Her message was carefully worded, designed to sound concerned rather than accusatory. Several homeowners have approached me about the impact of unpermitted commercial activity on our community insurance rates. Our neighborhood insurance provider contacted me this week asking specific questions about recreational facility modifications in our area. Has anyone else received insurance inquiries? I'm genuinely worried this situation could affect all our premiums this renewal cycle. Within 10 minutes, comments appeared from accounts I recognized as her allies. Someone claimed their insurance company had asked about water features. Another said their premium quote came back $40 per month higher with increased community risk factors. A third asked if the lake was even safe for kids if it wasn't permitted properly. I tried to respond. Typed out, there are no permit issues. The lake is on my private property but my comment disappeared the second I hit post. Notification popped up. Removed from group for disrupting community safety dialogue. Maria, as group administrator, had banned me from defending myself. 3 neighbors actually called their insurance companies after seeing her post. Diane verified None of those companies had any inquiries on record, but the perception was created. The narrative was set. I was costing everyone money. 2 more potential clients canceled landscape consultations, citing insurance concerns they'd heard about. Tuesday evening, 9:30 p.m. Kevin Wall showed up at my door. Kevin managed 4 rental properties in our neighborhood. His entire income depended on maintaining good relationships with the HOA and keeping tenants happy. He looked uncomfortable, kept glancing over his shoulder like he expected someone to jump out of the bushes. "Joseph, I need to tell you something," he said. His voice carried the weight of a man about to betray a secret. "Maria approached me yesterday. She offered me $5,000. My stomach dropped. "For what?" "To testify at a hearing about business disruptions caused by your lake. She wanted me to say my tenants complained about noise, parking problems, strangers coming through the neighborhood, and safety concerns affecting property values." She'd shown him documentation, a petition with neighbor signatures, witness statements, traffic studies. Said everyone was already on board, that he'd just be confirming community consensus. I asked him, "Did your tenants actually complain?" Kevin shook his head. "Opposite. 2 tenants specifically mentioned the lake as a reason they renewed their leases. They love it." So why was he telling me this? Because he was trapped. He managed rental properties for a living. His business depended on HOA relationships. If he refused Maria, she could ruin him, delayed approvals, manufacture violations, blocked maintenance access. But then he said something that floored me. "I recognize 3 of the signatures on that petition. My tenants. I know their handwriting. Those aren't their signatures. She forged them. And if I take money to give false testimony, I become part of the fraud. If this goes to court, and I'm involved, I lose everything." Kevin chose integrity. "I'm telling you what you're facing. I'm staying neutral. I can't afford to actively fight her, but I won't lie for you. You deserve to know." I thanked him, told him I understood, told him I wouldn't forget that he'd warned me. Wednesday afternoon brought a different kind of harassment. Maria showed up flanked by 3 people in tailored suits, each carrying glossy binders and digital tablets. She spoke loudly enough for half the street to hear, introducing them as development consultants evaluating community amenities for our neighborhood enhancement project. They weren't surveyors at all, just her real estate colleagues dressed for the part. But with their tablets flashing maps and charts, they looked official to anyone passing by. They spent 2 hours walking around the lake. Monday they arrived dressed like consultants, but their job wasn't analysis. It was theater. 3 polished professionals strolled the lake's edge with tablets flashing maps, speaking deliberately loud so every passing neighbor could overhear. Preliminary assessment shows roughly $2 million in development potential here. If community lake access rights can be established through proper HOA procedures. And of course, environmental review would need county approval. Each line floated through the neighborhood like baited hooks. When they slipped glossy business cards onto windshields for a company called Prestige Development Consulting, incorporated just 6 days earlier, the trap snapped shut. By nightfall, neighbors whispered to Joseph directly. Was he selling? Had the HOA made an offer? Were developers moving in? He had no answers, which made him look like a liar about his own land. Tuesday, the intimidation took a new form. Around the lake perimeter, laminated signs appeared overnight. Bold letters screamed, State Water Resources Department, temporary facility closure. The fine print warned of penalties for tampering and included a hotline number. The paper was fresh, the seal looked official, the warning convincing. Joseph called the number. A generic voicemail. Diane phoned the real State Department. They confirmed the obvious. No inspection, no order, no closure. And impersonating their agency? That was a federal crime. Someone wanted neighbors to believe the state had shut him down, to strip him of credibility in the court of public opinion. They documented everything, but Joseph still had to rip down the signs himself, one by one, as neighbors watched silently. Wednesday, the attack moved online. An email appeared in Joseph's inbox, subject line, temporary account restriction notice. It claimed his bank had frozen transactions over $500 at the request of a government inquiry. Payroll? Blocked. Supplier payments? Frozen. Mortgage? Delayed. Panic surged. He was already dialing the number inside the email when Diane caught him. Stop. Look at the sender's address. His real bank was First National Bank's. Calm. This one was First National Security. Calm. A single hyphen separated him from financial ruin. The entire thing was a phishing scam meant to make him hand over access voluntarily. His real banker confirmed. No restrictions, no inquiry, no freeze. The criminals wanted him to sabotage himself. Thursday, if the phishing email was smoke, the certified mail that arrived that afternoon was fire. A foreclosure notice. 2 missed mortgage payments, not even $30 each, had snowballed into default on his cross-collateralized loan. The demand, $34,000 in 30 days or lose the house. If he couldn't pay, the lender would accelerate the entire balance to $67,000. That night, Joseph sat at his kitchen table, surrounded by bills, calculator in hand. 18 months of sweat equity, of building his dream, of turning land into something living, now balanced against a number he couldn't raise without selling the lake for scrap. He could protect the house or the dream, but not both. Friday, Diane brought clarity. She'd been collecting every forged document. Bradley's fake citation, the fraudulent petitions, the laminated signs, the phishing attempt. She noticed a flaw invisible to the untrained eye. The same 1 millimeter watermark offset on every document. The same PDF template error. The same commercial-grade paper source. Not coincidence, a system. Her research led to the dark web, where a company brazenly advertised itself as Apex Security Solutions. Their menu read like a catalog of Joseph's torment. Authority figure consultation, $5,000 document template library, $2,000 multi-agency coordination, $10,000 complete compliance theater, $25,000, and there, in the testimonial section, was a 5-star review. Initials, MR. The review read like Maria herself had written it. Lake access rights secured within the contracted timeline. 5 stars. She had reviewed her own criminal contractor like she was praising a plumber. Saturday, the week closed with the hardest blow yet. At 9:47 p.m. a woman in business attire knocked on Joseph's door. She handed him an envelope with 2 words, "You've been served." Inside was a lawsuit. The plaintiff? Lakeside Community Interest Group, a corporation registered exactly 6 days ago. Damages demanded, $500,000. The claim? That his lake had destroyed community property values. Diane pulled the filings. 3 names appeared as founding members. 1 name stood out. Maria Rogers, listed as treasurer. Joseph turned to the evidence packet, trying to make sense of it, until he reached Exhibit D, the property appraisal. His stomach dropped. The report was dated 3 months before he had even purchased the land. Before Maria. Before the lake. Before any of it. Someone had planned this long before he set foot on the property. At the bottom of the page was a signature Joseph didn't recognize. But Diane did. When her eyes hit the name, her face drained of color. The first hard proof arrived like a gunshot. A wire transfer for $50,000 landed in Maria Rogers' account. The memo line was as bold as it was damning. Advance payment. Lake Access Development Agreement. The sender? Prestige Property Development, LLC. The very name I'd once glimpsed on the document Maria had tried to hide from me. Follow the money, they always say. Over the next 3 months, Maria carved up that advance with surgical precision. 3 checks to Apex Security Solutions for $8,333 each, totaling exactly $25,000. The same shadowy company whose services mirrored every fake citation, every forged inspection, every intimidation tactic we'd faced. Another $12,000 vanished into a printing company specializing in security-grade documents. $8,000 more went to a legal consultation firm famous for advising on HOA authority loopholes. And $5,000 in cash withdrawals coincided perfectly with the day she bribed Kevin Walsh. When Diane and I looked at her account's current balance, $2,400, it was clear Maria had burned through every penny of her advance. She was out of ammo and out of time. Then came the slip-up. A county clerk, One of Diane's old contacts from her investigative days accidentally CC'd Diane on an email chain. In the thread was Maria's direct correspondence with Prestige Property Development. Attached to one email was a complete, unredacted contract. Diane and Detective Morgan moved fast and obtained a copy through proper channels. Reading that contract was like having a blurry photograph snap into focus. It was dated 6 months before I'd even finished building my lake. Prestige wasn't improvising. They had a blueprint. Their luxury community expansion required a glossy amenity, a private lake, a marketing jewel, and Maria had promised to deliver it. Her payoff? $400,000 if she could secure HOA-approved community easement rights to my property. She'd already collected the $50,000 advance 5 months ago. But buried in the fine print was a poison pill. Her entitlement to the commission was contingent on the HOA establishing legal standing for lake access and securing majority resident approval through proper procedures. If she failed to deliver an executed easement by the contract's termination date, exactly 3 weeks away, she had to return all advance payments within 30 days plus 12% annual interest. By our math, that meant she'd owe about $52,500. With $2,400 left in her account, she was cornered. She's trapped, I said quietly, staring at the numbers. Even if she wanted to stop, she can't. She'd face fraud charges from the development company. She's as desperate as we are. Diane nodded grimly. Desperate people make mistakes, she said, but they're also dangerous. Saturday evening, Diane spread everything across her dining room table like a war map. Bank statements, contract printouts, timelines of fake inspections, photos of forged documents, even evidence from Eleanor's and Rachel's cases. Each piece of paper was a nail in Maria's coffin. The pattern was no longer hidden. It screamed. Maria had signed that contract in January, gambling on my lake to raise property values, which it had by 30%, and then used the advance to bankroll Bradley's mercenaries, counterfeit documents, legal loopholes, and bribes. Her deadline was approaching, and she was financially doomed unless she stole access to my lake. Diane slid a folder across the table. Detective Morgan's proposed sting operation. The plan was dangerous but simple. Pose as a new client requesting Bradley's enforcement services, record Maria's involvement, and catch them admitting the conspiracy on tape. Morgan would move in with arrests. But there was a problem. My face was too well known. If anyone walked into that room wearing a wire, it had to be Diane. My 60-year-old neighbor would be the one to face them, gambling everything on Maria's greed outpacing her caution. 3 weeks until Maria's contract deadline, Diane said softly. One shot to catch them. We were still staring at Maria's signature in blue ink, frozen in January's optimism, when Diane's phone rang. Unknown number. She put on speaker. At first, only heavy breathing, then a man's voice, calm and professional. Miss Fletcher, my name is Marcus Webb. I represent Prestige Property Development. I believe you and Mr. Harris have been researching Maria Rogers quite thoroughly. Long pause. I'm parked outside Mr. Harris's house right now. I'd like to come in and have a conversation because Maria is about to do something very, very stupid tomorrow morning, and you both need to know about it before it's too late. That's where the story stops for now. Marcus Webb is standing at my door. Maria's deadline is 3 weeks away, and I have to decide, right now, whether to trust a man tied to the very people trying to destroy me.